Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Sarah Clarke joining me. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, a little bit about Sarah. Sarah loves reading psychological thrillers and has always dreamed of becoming an author in that genre, but it took her time getting there. After studying for a degree in politics and international relations, traveling the world for 6 years, and completing 5 ski seasons, she moved to London and became a copywriter, wife, and a mother. In 2018, she enrolled in the Faber Academy writing a novel course and finally learned the craft she loved. She joined HQ Digital in March 21, and A Mother Never Lies is her debut novel, which you've got there, and her second novel is Every Little Secret. And I want
There
to
you go.
just say about Every Little Secret as well. I started reading it. I haven't quite finished. I'm about halfway through reading it, and absolutely love it. So,
Well, thank
really
you.
looking forward to finishing it and sharing with people how much I loved it. So, thanks
Oh,
so
thank you. That's
much
good to
for
hear.
giving me the opportunity to read it. Really gripping, and once you just want to keep. I'm surprised I haven't finished reading it yet, but I've been a little bit busier than normal. Otherwise, I probably would have read it in a day or two, I think.
Thank you. Yes, it is kind of hopes try to make it that kind of book with secrets coming out of different
Yeah,
places.
yeah. Just wondering if you want to start off by telling us a little bit about both of your books.
Sure. So, Mother Never Lies was my first book, and that basically it follows the lives of Phoebe and Ben, and actually all my books are set in southwest London. But Phoebe is back in London because she is looking for her son, who was adopted following a sort of traumatic event when he was nearly 4. And she hasn't seen him since, and he's now 17, and she knows that once he's 18 that he could be gone from the area, so this is her sort of last chance to sort of look for him, even though I don't know it's in Australia, but in the UK it's against the law for her to look for him,
Mm,
but she is doing. And Ben is a 17-year-old boy with some challenges. He lives with a very sort of wealthy family, goes to a lovely private school, but he's adopted and he doesn't feel like he fits in. And it's basically the coming together of the two sort of people, but in a way you might not expect. And also it goes back in time to kind of unravel why he was taken from her in the first place. And then there's kind of a bit of a sort of big ending where it all sort
mm,
of comes together. So
mm.
um,
So a big
whereas
is it a big lots of twists and turns?
yeah, yes, it is. And I think
Mm,
sort of flawed characters and kind of challenging the readers as to where their loyalties lie, because in some ways she's a mother following her mother's instinct, but in
mm,
other ways she's, putting him in a, she's lying, and,
mm.
and sort of putting him in a difficult situation. He's a quite a vulnerable sort of child. So it's kind of, so I'm trying to do is play with the reader's own sort of moral compass as to what they believe. And it's actually really interesting when I get feedback, because, you know, you do get the different sides. People's
Yeah.
opinions differ on what they think, which is great,
Mm,
which is what I was, always intended.
mm.
So,
And have you
um,
had any readers contact you who've been in maybe a similar circumstance?
I have actually. Well, actually,
Mm,
so I've had a couple of reviews. I've had one email, and I've had a couple of reviews that have
mm,
said, I kind of, this is something that, I can really sort of resonates with me because of an experience which is, it's so lovely to read,
mm.
um, that it can touch people in that way. So,
Yeah.
because it actually started, the whole idea for the book came about because I watched an interview with somebody on a TV show who was a birth mother looking for their child. And, understandably, the sort of the protection is always with the child, which is
Mm,
absolutely as it should be. But, the mother then does, obviously she has feelings and love, and I'm a mother, and I know what I mean. And we all have mothers. Some all have had mothers. So, that's where the idea to write a book about it came from. But then, I am a thriller writer, so you have to put all the kind of twists and turns in as well. So, and then Every Little Secret. This one, my second one. This is about a family who live in London, who are a very nice family, Grace and Marcus, and their daughter, 7-year-old daughter, Kaya. And it all seems very lovely, and it is very lovely. But one day, Kaya, she tells her mum, Grace, that her dad is hurting her. And he hugely denies this, and very convincingly denies it. And they have a very strong marriage. And Grace is basically put in a position where she has to decide who to trust, her child or her husband, which is, obviously you'd think, so obviously, of course, you go with the child, but, she's been very much in love with her husband since she was 16, and she just can't quite believe that he would do it. So, that's a challenge for her. But there are also, she has some other secrets that she needs to protect. So it's not just as simple, well, not that it's simple, but it's not just about that. There are other things going on that she needs
there
to,
certainly are a lot of secrets, and I like how you just slowly bring them out.
Things unravel, get worse and stuff. So yes, it's. But I do always like that idea of what people are on the surface are quite different behind the scenes. So always kind of trying to play with that in my writing.
And I'm from New Zealand, and you've got a bit of a New Zealand touch in the book. Just wondering how that came about.
Well, I spent some time in New Zealand and absolutely loved it. And my kids will still say Mum left a piece of her heart in New Zealand. So it was, and I'm also a rugby fan as well. And for any sort of people out there who are not into rugby, it's not a big part of it at all, but there's a little bit of, Kaya is a big rugby fan. And yeah, so it was an opportunity to sort of maybe put a bit of I think Every Little Secret has got a bit more of me in it.
Okay.
Than, not all the terrible secrets, just to point out. But the sort of being able to put New Zealand in there, and Thailand, which is another place I visited. So, but I have a good friend who still lives from New Zealand, who still lives there, and she was very helpful in fact, when the first draft had a lot more of New Zealand in there. And she was very helpful at kind of sort of giving me lots of research, helping with my research and so on. But for not because of New Zealand, but for other reasons, it ended up being less set there than there was originally.
Yeah. And what was the first idea you had for that one?
I think it was because of this idea that, that sort of fundamental belief that you always believe the child, but in reality, you rarely believe the child. If you say, did you eat the last biscuit? And they say no, they probably did. You'd over your husband, you would kind of, the husband would say, no, I didn't. And so the little lies, children tell little lies all the time, and we kind of comfortable with not believing them. And so I was the sort of thought, what if you take that to the extreme, and a child to say something that is extreme, do you then, at what point do you think, you do believe the child, and so on? And there's just that, there's a sort of fundamental belief in society that that's what we should do, and I agree with that. But I just wonder, if you're put in that circumstances and you have a really strong relationship with your partner, whether it is that easy to do that. So that's where the idea came from originally.
And did it challenge you a bit with what you might think if you were put in a similar situation?
Yeah, I think it did, because, luckily my children have never said that to me. But, it would be a struggle to believe them, I think, because, I know my partner, and I just can't imagine him doing that. Luckily it hasn't come about, but it did make me, think, when you're put in an extreme situation that you would never envisage, you don't actually know how you would react because you're not prepared for it. So, and I think it would be challenging for anyone to just have to sort of deal with that. So, yeah. It was, yeah.
And could you, like, in your bio, I read out you'd wanted to be an author for a while. What clicked to say, right, I'm going to write my book?
So I have in the past sort of started books and never quite finished them. I am a writer, so I was a copywriter as my sort of other job. So I do write all the time and have done for 20 years. But when my son went to his secondary school in the September of 2018, and that kind of gave me a little bit of extra time because it's just a longer school day and just being a bit older and so on. So I was like, right, I'm going to sign up for the course. And that was like a catalyst because I absolutely loved the course. I loved the people I met. I loved writing my book. I loved learning the craft. I loved, you know, I remember, I don't know if there's any kind of would-be writers out there, but my tutor saying to me, I'd written this sort of lovely sentence full of brilliant kind of, you know, words and metaphors or whatever. And she said, well, yeah, that's great, but would your character really think like that? It was like a light bulb moment. Of course they're not. You know, as a copywriter, you're always trying to think of good words, but actually, when you're writing as a character, you have to think about how they think and write and how they think. And so, yeah. So I loved all that course. So at that point, that was when I thought, you know, this is definitely what I want. But you know, it took a while still for rejections and so on. But,
Yeah, could you tell us a bit about your publishing journey and how you actually got that first book published?
Well, a lot of rejections. I had quite a lot of full manuscript requests. So you know, you send off your 3 chapters, and they came back and asked for full manuscript. And those are the ones you think, oh my goodness, this is going to happen now. So I had, I think, 7 full manuscript requests. That the 6 that turned into rejections over in the end, which was all a bit sad. And then actually during the pandemic, I did sort of kind of switch off a little bit because I had other priorities, and as many of us did, and then sort of went back to it. But that's why I went back directly, because I don't actually have an agent. I went directly to the publisher, which you can do with HQ Digital, and I went to 3, and 2 of them came back with offers. So for me personally, it was great that I could kind of miss out that agent stage, go straight to publishing. But then as soon, you know, after having spent kind of a couple of years really trying to get it published, suddenly I had a 3-book deal and really tight deadlines. So I went from desperately wishing things would speed up to kind of wishing things would slow down a bit.
Okay, so yeah, 3-book deals, pretty great.
Yeah, it was good, and it is good. But it was, you know, they want them quite quickly. So
yeah.
But it's all right. I've written my 3rd book's finished now. So
can you tell us anything about that 3rd book?
So yeah, it's I can't tell you the title yet, but it's sort of looking at stalking, the kind of issue around stalking. There's the kind of classic stalker, but there's also different ways of stalking that we all do maybe without realizing it a little bit now with social media and so on. So so whereas The Mother Never Lies and Every Little Secret, it's about a mother relationship really, well it is. And the 3rd book is more about friends or not so friends. But yeah, I really like it. I do actually.
And when will that one be out?
So that's out in November.
Okay, oh well, it is very quick then for your 3 books, isn't it?
Yeah. So and now I'm kind of working on a 4th, but we'll see. I'm doing that like out of contract at the moment. So we'll see how that.
Okay.
And yeah, well, it's all brilliant. I love it. So
yeah, you must do to and to be able to write them so fast as well.
I think once you start, you know, it's hard to start, and then once you get into the characters, I was watching one of the other interviews, and that idea that, you know, living your characters, I definitely do that. I get when I'm writing the chapters in particular characters, I really sort of live their life, and then that acts as, you know, sort of a snowballs, you know, because you want to keep telling their story and keep writing, and so that definitely helps.
Do you have to quite like structure your day to make sure that you have a certain amount of time set aside for writing?
I would love to. I have this
Mm.
conversation with myself regularly about you just need more structure in your life, Sarah. Um, but it sort of doesn't really work out that way. I do spend a lot of time actually writing. I probably do about 7 hours a day of writing, and then but sometimes that might be copywriting if I've got work on, or it might be book writing.
So
And
you're
it
still
might
doing your
be
other
in the morning
job
or
as
it might be in
well.
the evening, or what's that?
You're
Sorry.
still doing your other job as well as trying to do your writing?
I am not
Yeah.
as much as I used to. I
Mm.
haven't really got the time to do both at the
You
same
must be
level. But
very
I do
busy.
have a few clients that I still work for. Yes,
Mm.
so it just depends on when they've got work for me. So,
Yeah. Must be
but
very busy.
I'll, yeah, yeah, it's yeah, it has its moments, but it kind of
Mm.
ebbs and flows a little bit. So you get your first the first 3 months of this year, I was literally working so hard,
Mm.
and then you kind of get the first draft in, and then you're not going to hear back for 3 weeks, and you think, oh, 3 weeks, just chill, be more chill. Then the
Yeah.
edits come back and stuff. So
Yeah. And we've got quite a few people watching, which is great. Just want to remind people watching that if you do have a question for Sarah, please type it in comments and I can read it out. I've got a few questions coming through. Kelly wonders if you have a book that you enjoyed writing more.
well, gosh, that's a good question, and I think with my first book, I didn't have that sort of the sort of pressure of a deadline.
Mm,
Um, and so in that sense, I was doing my course and I had friends on my course. So I think in that sense, I probably enjoyed writing that the most. But I would say that there are certain characters that I really enjoyed. So in Every Little Secret, there's this character called Coco, who's kind of like an extreme character. She's sort of a bit like Marmite, but to write her, it was brilliant. So
mm,
when I'd get to my Coco chapters, I'd always I really enjoy writing those. And I have a similar character in my third book called Saskia, and she's the same. She's just a fun person to write.
yeah,
So
yeah.
but yes, probably Mother Never Lies would be my favourite in the sense that I just did it on my own time.
Mm. And you've answered Belinda's question because she wondered if you had a favourite character. So
Oh, okay.
thanks for sharing that. And Wendy wonders if you have, if sorry, do you have? Oh, I don't know if I can quite understand her question. Maybe you can type your question again, Wendy. I'm a little bit confused. Sorry. But I think what she is asking is about plotting, how you go about plotting.
So there's the idea of being a pantser or a plotter, and I'm definitely a plotter. I have sacrilege to writers, but I have a spreadsheet which I
Mm,
actually put the chapter numbers in, and I put really, kind of like methodically write down what's going to happen in each chapter. But then the sort of art side of me comes out, and I basically, as I write, I kind of change it the whole time. So the book that I finish up with doesn't really doesn't resemble massively the sort of spreadsheet I started with, because I change it all the time. But I do
mm,
then I change the plan regularly as I write. So I kind of like work the plot and the book alongside each
mm,
other, if you know what I mean. So for me personally, I can't just write and see where it goes. I need to feel like I'm on a journey, and if that journey changes direction, then that's absolutely fine, and it always
mm,
does. But I
mm,
sort of need to feel like that I have a map to work to.
mm. And what
I'm a
about
really bad in real life, so there's maybe that's something in that.
Yeah. And what about the ultimate end? Is that something you know, or does that develop as you go along?
So in Mother Never Lies was brilliant because I knew that the event, how it's going to end.
Mm,
But I didn't know what the fallout was going to be from that event. And I decided I was just going to let it just happen.
mm,
Um, and that was brilliant because once I got to that point, it was so obvious what should happen, but
mm,
I needed to get to that point to that to happen. Um, in every little secret, I think there was an awful lot of kind of strands that needed to all be tied together, and but then as you'll discover, the final chapter was a kind of last minute change, which I quite like. I quite like it. So yeah, I think that the endings are hard. The ending of my third book's been incredibly challenging.
Yeah,
It's changed about 5 times.
Oh,
so,
really?
yeah. You kind of, it all comes to this sort of climax, and then you need to sort of wrap it up, and it can be quite challenging. I think I'm there now.
And previously I mentioned that you like psychological thrillers. What have you read any lately that you'd like to recommend to us?
You know, I was thinking about this because actually some of the books I've read lately that I've really enjoyed aren't actually psychological thrillers, but I have read, so do you know Gillian McAllister? I read That Night. I know she's got a new one out I haven't read yet, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, which I haven't read, but That Night was brilliant. So I really enjoyed that. And When I Was 10 by Fiona Cummins was another really good book. And then I have just read A Proof by Sophie Flynn, Keep Them Close. So that's out in July, I think. And that was really good. But I've also read I've just finished The People on Platform 5 by Clarke, which is not a thriller. It's a kind of uplit book, but that was a lovely book. And I'm currently listening to Lessons in Chemistry, which I highly recommend. I'm sort of halfway through.
Okay.
So
Thanks
those are
for
my
those recommendations. Yeah, no, thanks. We love getting recommendations. And you mentioned before that you had some unfinished or half-finished books. Do you think you would ever go back to them?
So there is one book that I would absolutely love to write, and my publisher says it's too dark.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't think it is. But I might try and lighten it slightly because the reason I love it is I love the twist in it. It's like I just think would be a real kind of jaw-dropping kind of twist for people to read. So really, I should be able to sort of change it to and that's where we're about a third written at the moment. So I would love to kind of adapt it and rewrite that one. Yeah, definitely. But other than that, because sometimes there's another one, but I sort of feel like time's moved on. It just feels like it's dated really now. I don't know why. Although I do take bits, like the book I'm sort of working on now, I've got little bits from other books I've written, just little ideas that I've kind of nicked and put in.
And what about research? What sort of research have you been doing?
So I do research because I think for me personally, it's really important to get things right on kind of like police and medical and anything that kind of involves facts are just very important to get it right. I obviously do some desk research and so on, but my favorite kind of research is to talk to people. And I have sort of built a network. People are incredibly helpful, I find. So, this is a one-off, but I talked to somebody who was an adoptive parent for Mother Never Lies, and they were just so generous with their kind of insight and sort of explanation of their story. And that was just one of the highlights of writing the book, actually, just being able to sort of get an understanding of how they felt about the experience. But then, so I have a policeman who's very helpful. I have a doctor who's very helpful. And I go out and try and find people to talk to. Because I just find you get a lot of, just the little nuggets, the little anecdotes of situations that can add real sort of authenticity to the book, I think.
And what have you found so far to be the most difficult part of your writing process?
I think probably tying all the different strands up together, and sort of getting the reveals at the right time, because obviously I know the twist. So I know what happens at the end, and it's kind of making sure there's enough clues but not too many clues. And because what you really want is for the reader to think, to read the twist and go, oh my goodness, I can't believe it, but
Yeah.
also think, oh yeah, now I know it. Suddenly
Mm,
it's obvious, kind of thing. So it's finding that balance is really tricky, I think.
mm,
So I would probably say that's the hardest bit, but also probably, well, it's often the way, isn't it? But probably the most satisfying if you do it
yeah.
because it's the hardest, I guess.
Mm, mm. And when you're writing, do you have a favourite snack or drink?
Um, I drink a lot of tea. I am
Okay,
very
yeah.
typically English in that way.
Mm.
So
What
I,
sort of tea
yes.
do you drink?
What's that?
What
Sorry.
sort of tea do you drink?
Oh, just English
Just
breakfast
English, yeah.
or builder's tea, as we like. I actually do quite a lot of work in a cafe, like
Mm,
a local cafe. So I go and sit there with my laptop, and
mm.
so I'm constantly buying cups of tea to earn my office space.
And if there's anything you'd like to, is there anything you'd like to share for any new writers out there?
Um, yes, well, it's brilliant because it is really challenging to to write in the first place, and to then be happy to share your writing and to get a deal and all that kind of stuff is really challenging. So I would say the writing community is amazing. I think probably because everyone knows how challenging it is,
Mm,
and it can be quite lonely. You're working on your own. So on social, like on Twitter or Facebook, Instagram, there's just I think probably especially Twitter, there's a huge supportive community on there. And so I would say if you're into writing but you're feeling a little bit it's not going anywhere, or you need some help, or you're not sure, then I would say look for other people, because there's lots of people in the same
mm,
position, and to get that support and feeling that other people understand is, I think, really valuable. So
yeah. So do you have your own writers support group?
yeah, so I'm in a group. I'm in a books that published in 2021, so debut
Mm,
2021 group,
mm,
which are very supportive and help. And but then I also just have sort of reached out to authors for
mm,
various different reasons, and yeah, I've had such great feedback and support. And when you kind of want people to read your books as a debut and they don't know who you are from Adam and stuff. So there's been some brilliant like authors out there who, and it probably tends to be the ones who are relatively new over the last couple
mm.
of years because they remember what it's
What it's like,
like.
yeah.
But yeah, it's been really
Mm,
really helpful
mm.
for me.
And are you someone when you're writing that you like to sound things off with other people, or do you just write it all and wait till it goes to your editor?
So I'm a bit of both. I do like to sound people off about my book,
Mm,
but I'm a bit exclusive about who I'm willing for them to see my sort of work
mm,
before I'm sort of comfortable with it. So my dad is brilliant. My dad reads all my stuff before, and he's always someone who's willing to have an opinion. So
mm.
which is actually good. So he gives his feedback, and then my poor husband, we go on dog walks, and he will, I'll be like, I've got this plot problem, and so we talk it through, and he's great for kind of coming up with, the other day we were out actually in a pub having a beer, and I got this, I have to kill somebody in a certain way, and we basically had a half an hour conversation about how to kill this
Oh,
person.
do you
And
think
you leave and you
anyone
think, I hope no one was
was
listening to our
listening over?
conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so that's and yeah, and I have one friend actually who does also read my stuff. So,
Mm,
but yeah,
yeah. And
I'm not looking to send it out to lots of people.
when you finished your book, have you done anything special to celebrate when you finished?
Sleep.
Mm.
No, no, it's always worth. It's I actually my last one I just finished the day before we went on holiday. So I celebrated with a ski holiday, but
Oh,
that was
nice.
it's in the diary. It was more like I had to finish it before I went.
Yeah.
So there's always a sense of celebration when you kind of send it off. So
Mm, mm.
yeah,
And have
but
you
there's
been
obviously
able
lots of
to,
stages.
sorry, have you been able to get out much to promote your books?
So I have done a little bit. I'm actually, actually not hugely. First of all, because I'm a digital first publisher, so it comes out as ebook
Mm,
before paperback.
mm,
So the kind of publication sort of celebration is more around on the digital, on social media and so on, because it is a digital
Yeah.
version of it. I am doing a library talk in a couple of weeks, which will be my first in-person kind of event. I've done a few book signings in my local book stores as well. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to do more, but.
And well, thanks so much for talking to me. Been great chatting to you, and we've had some great questions come through from people. And just on a personal note, I'm really excited to finish reading Every Little Secret, and looking forward to reading more of your books.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on here. It's great to.
Thank you. Do you want to let people know watching how they can keep in touch with you?
So if you go to I'm just going to show you my books one more time. So I'm really rubbish at this side of things. So I've got my website, sarahclarkeauthor.com, and on there you can sign up to all my social media is listed on there, or my newsletter, which is sporadic at best at the moment, but is due to be improved soon. So yes, that's if you're sarahclarkeauthor.com, and then everything's on there.
Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Bye.